They climbed into my cab at 2 in the morning, two men in reflective vests with a railroad officer behind them, and the first thing out of their mouths was that my train had gone into a string of standing cars and that I'd run a stop signal to do it. I had a mile of loaded grain behind me, and my hands were still on the controls. I hadn't run anything. I'd had a green over red, a proceed, and I took it the way I've taken 10,000 signals in 28 years at the authorized speed, with my hand on the brake. And now a man I'd never met was standing in my cab telling me I'd wrecked a train. 28 years I ran freight for that railroad. 28 years, not one rules violation, not one overspeed, not one pass signal. I was the engineer they gave the heavy tonnage to, the long drags over the pass in the winter, because I didn't rush, and I didn't cut corners, and I brought the train in the way you're supposed to. Careful. That was my whole reputation. Careful was the only thing I ever sold. And in one radio call it was gone, and I was the engineer who ran a red. I want to tell you about the man who did it to me. His name was Kessler, and he was the dispatcher working my territory that night. A dispatcher is the one who lines the railroad ahead of you. He throws the switches, he gives you your track authority, he sets the signals. When it works, you never think about him. You take your signals and you run your train, and he's just a voice on the radio giving you the road. You trust him with your life every single trip because you have to. There's no other way to run a railroad. And that night Kessler lined a switch wrong. He put my train off the main and into a siding that already had cars standing in it. And the signal he had displayed when I came up on it was a proceed. Green over red. I know what I saw. I called it out loud to my conductor the way you're trained to, and I took it, because that is what the signal told me to do. Then my headlight caught the standing cars in the siding, and there was nothing left to do but big hole it. Dump the air, full emergency, and it wasn't enough distance, and we hit them at a walking pace with a mile of grain shoving from behind. Nobody died. A couple of minor injuries in the yard crew, kept way off to the side of what this became. But a train had hit cars, and the railroad needed a reason, and Kessler handed them the easiest one there is. He told them the engineer ran a stop signal. Here is what that costs a man like me. It is not just the job. The Federal Railroad Administration holds your certificate. A finding that you passed a stop signal and caused a collision gets that certificate pulled, decertified, and once the FRA decertifies you, you do not run a train for anybody, anywhere, again. 28 years, and I'd never run a train for anyone but them, and it's the only work I know. And if one of those injuries had been worse, the railroad's lawyers were already saying the word negligence, and negligence with injuries is how an engineer ends up in front of more than a hearing. I drove home that morning a 52-year-old man who'd been told he might never work his trade again and might be prosecuted for a signal I never ran. My wife asked me what happened. I told her the signal was green. I said it flat because I needed it to be the kind of true you can prove, not just the kind you swear to. My conductor had seen the same green the first did. But he was young, 2 years on, and scared, and Kessler was senior and management leaned toward dispatch, and I wasn't going to let a scared kid put his own certificate in front of a freight train for me. This wasn't going to get fixed by whose words sounded better. It was going to get fixed by the things in that cab and that dispatch office that write everything down and can't be leaned on. Because here is what Kessler forgot, the way these people always forget the one thing. That locomotive is writing a record the whole time I'm running it. There's an event recorder in it, the black box, same idea as an airplane. It logs my throttle, my dynamic brake, my air, my speed, my horn, my headlight, and the signal the cab was showing, all of it stamped to the second. It doesn't care that I'm tired or that Kessler is senior. It just writes down what happened. And there's more than the black box. The railroad runs positive train control now, PTC, and PTC logs the authority the dispatcher gave my train and the signal indications the system enforced. And Kessler's own dispatching console logs every switch he lines and every signal he changes under his login with a time on it. So through the FRA investigation and with my union rep pushing, we pulled all three. The event recorder, the PTC log, Kessler's console log, and we put them on one timeline, the same 60 seconds, side by side. The black box showed the cab signal displaying proceed when I passed it, and it showed me at authorized speed, and it showed me dumping the air into emergency the second my headlight found those cars. Exactly what a careful engineer does. The PTC log agreed. The system had given my train the road. And the console log showed the truth Kessler thought no one would ever line up next to his story. He lined that switch into the occupied siding 8 seconds before my train reached it. 8 seconds. And then, this is the part that turned my stomach and then set me free. His console showed him going back into the log after the collision and changing the signal indication to read stop. He edited the record. He made the machine lie to match his story. But the machine keeps a record of being edited, too, and it kept that. They held the FRA hearing in a conference room at the division office. The superintendent was there. The FRA investigator was there. Kessler was there, in a clean shirt, still sure that the dispatcher's word beats the engineer's, the way it usually does. My rep put the 3 timelines up on the screen together, and we didn't argue. We played the 60 seconds. The green signal on the black box. The switch thrown under Kessler's login, 8 seconds out. And then the after-the-fact edit, time-stamped an hour after the train was already stopped and on the ground. The FRA investigator asked Kessler one question. He asked him why the signal indication in the log had been changed after the collision from his console under his login. Kessler didn't have an answer because there isn't one. There's no story you can tell about a signal you edited an hour after the wreck. My conductor, watching the black box back him up, said out loud that the signal was green. And I watched it land on Kessler in front of the superintendent and the federal man. The moment he understood that the machines had been keeping their own record the entire time, and the machines don't get tired and don't get scared and don't care who's senior. They cleared me completely on the FRA record. My certificate was never actually in danger once the recorder was in front of the investigator. The black box had me doing everything right. I got my job back, and the back pay, and a written finding that the collision was caused by a dispatcher error and a falsified record, and that the engineer acted correctly. The railroad changed how the signal logs work. A dispatcher can't quietly edit a signal indication after an event anymore. It locks at the time of an incident. The scared young conductor never took a mark for it. I made sure his name stayed clean. And Kessler was fired, decertified as a dispatcher, and handed to the people who prosecute falsifying federal safety records, the same certificate pulling machine he tried to feed me into. I still run freight over that pass. Same heavy tonnage, same long nights, same green over red that I call out loud to a conductor every trip. And sometimes, coming down the mountain with a mile of loaded grain pushing at my back, I think about how the whole time they were calling me careless, the thing that was going to save me was already bolted to the floor of my cab, quiet, writing down the truth 1 second at a time. I built 28 years on being careful. It turned out the black box had been careful right along with me.